Deep below the city's streets, a portal tears through the walls of a sewer chamber. Through it comes an enormous and vile humanoid shape, a hybrid of shadow and flesh resembling a bipedal toad. Its broad maw holds a long tongue and rows of razor-sharp fangs. It has been sent to guard this portal, and its only desire is to serve and succeed. This is where the Banderhobb creeps. I started by digging through all my scrap and found 2 decent pieces. I cut them down and was left with a 5x5 and an 8x5 piece of 1-inch thick XPS foam. Then I grabbed a piece of PVC plumbing pipe and another small plastic tube. I'll use these for the sewer pipes coming out of the wall. Full disclosure here, folks, I had no plans when I started this. I had a WizKids Banderhobb mini laying around that I really wanted to paint up and knew immediately that I wanted to build him a lair for my sewer tile build. Once I get an idea of where I want the pipes to be, I grab one of my modular sewer tiles and decide how I want to connect this chamber to the tile system. Then I mark that off with a pen. Next, let's figure out where to put the portal. I want it to be ripping through the wall and the floor to add some dimension to the chamber. Then we'll take these plastic tubes, press them into the foam, and trace out where they'll be placed. I draw a straight line across to show how far down I have to cut the back wall. Now we'll draw out where the sewer water will run from the pipes to meet up with the sewer tile system. Time to cut. These cuts would be too deep to melt out with the hot wire knife indoors, and it was raining outside, so I decided to use the X-Acto knife. I cut the foam at an angle, then with a sculpting tool, I pull the foam away. Then we'll line that up. Make sure everything looks good. And then we'll repeat for the bottom part of the portal. And then where the water will come out of the pipes. I'm just going to line these up one more time to make sure everything looks even. Then we'll dry fit the pipes to make sure they look right. They do. Awesome. On to the next step. I'm usually a fan of gluing on individual bricks or stones for projects like these. It adds a lot of realism to the piece, but these had to fit well with my sewer tiles, so I use the same technique I use with those. I cut out the grout lines with an X-Acto knife, going about an 1/8 inch deep, and then went over it all with a ballpoint pen to bevel the edges. On to texturing. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm a big fan of using tin foil and this texturing tool together. The foil gives sharper texture while this tool softens it a bit, adding an organic feel to the foam. Now using some hot glue, I glue the 2 pieces together, making sure they're square and even. Now the first of many issues I came across due to the lack of planning. I wasn't too happy with how the 2 layers met here, so I grabbed some joint compound and made a few cuts to make the edges join up a bit better. Next, let's slap on the base coat. I use Blackmagic Craft's mix of matte Mod Podge and black paint. I usually water it down a bit as well to make sure it gets into all the little cracks and crevices. I hopped off camera to take these 2 plastic pipes outside and give them a coat of black primer. Then we'll glue these into place. Then for the second coat of paint, I grabbed my dark gray, mixed that with water to about a 50-50 consistency, and then threw that on. After that dried, I grabbed a flat gray and applied that in what could best be described as a heavy dry brush, just to help the texture pop. Then on to applying my homemade black-brown wash. This is just the first layer. I made a mistake and forgot to record me adding the second layer, as well as the first coat for where the water will run. For that, I just mixed these two earthy green colors and slapped them on there pretty thick. After that dries, we'll add a wash to that as well. And then drop the last of this wash into these recesses. Next, I wanted to add some flocking under where the water will be. Since this will be covered by resin, I just grabbed the cheapest stuff I had around. I think this is some old flocking I got at Michael's ages ago. One is a clumpy deep green color, and the other is a finer light green. I used some tacky glue to apply those. Okay, now I wanted to add some lighting effects to the portal, so I grabbed some white and blue LEDs. Then I take this small drill and make 4 holes for the LEDs to fit into. I push them through until they're flush with the bottom of the portal, as I don't want them protruding out too far. Now for wiring. Like in my last video, I used a Conway 4-channel LED driver made by Terraintronics. These things are great and made wiring this piece very easy. After wiring, I glued in the LEDs with hot glue and then tested them out one more time before moving on. Next, I added a deep purple undercoat. I debated using black as it's supposed to represent a portal to the Shadowfell, but I thought a dark purple would give the same effect, but also help it stand out a bit more. Now to pour the sewer water. I find filming pouring resin to be really difficult, so I prepared it off camera. I'm using Envirotex Light. I just added a few drops of dark umber acrylic ink and mixed that all up. I follow the directions precisely on the box. Then took some blue painter's tape to create a dam at the end, and then slowly added the resin. After pouring, I moved the piece about to make sure there was full coverage. Then I used a popsicle stick to push some of the resin up into the big pipe. I went with a different method when creating the portal. I used hot glue as the base. To create the texture for the portal, I used this splash gel from Green Stuff World and mixed it with a bit of the purple paint I used as the base. This stuff is great. I've never used it before, but it worked like a charm. I applied it with a brush using a simple stippling technique. After that dries, I check the LEDs again, just to make sure everything is still working. Then I take the splash effect and add some ripples to the water. Now I debated leaving the pipes black, but it didn't seem right, and I felt the piece needed some more color. So I wanted to add an intense rust effect to the pipes. I've never done this before, so it took me ages to get it right. I started with a burnt orange for the base coat, and then dappled on some brown with a Q-tip. As I was in the mood to try new things, I grabbed some pigments from Green Stuff World. This took me a little while to get it right. I wanted a lot of texture, so I tried piling it on at first. That didn't quite work out how I wanted it to, so I went back and added a few more layers with a dry brush, which I felt worked a lot better. Next, I wanted to add some water pouring out of this top pipe. First, I measured how tall it would be, and then grabbed a piece of scrap foam and cut it to that height. Then I covered it with some parchment paper. I grabbed some UV resin and drew a line in an arch to represent the water. Curing took about 90 seconds with a UV torch, and it fit perfectly. Back to the splash effect. To add some detail to the water, I did this in 2 layers to get some good height on the splashes. After this step I was quite happy, but after filming I did a little touching up under the large pipe, and that was about it. I used a lot of new techniques in this build that frankly I was pretty worried about, but I'm glad I did in the end because they all worked great. I'm very happy with it and I can't wait to use it in my game. That'll do it for this episode of Pocket Tea Craft. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I had an absolute blast making this piece. Works great with my sewer tiles. If you're interested in knowing how I made these, you can head on over to the Crazy Crafter YouTube channel. I hopped on the live stream there last week, gave a little tutorial on how to build these. I'll put a little link up there. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for watching. Take care, y'all.